I hate Christian video games. So, I'm a Skyrim addict, and I'm a devout traditional Catholic Christian. I should be the target audience for a Christian Skyrim mod. So a while ago, I looked at one of these mods, and it completely sucked. It was horrible. I honestly don't know where to begin. But yeah, let's go over some of the problems with Christian video game mods, because this is something that I think is a really good thing that we should be doing. I love how they're trying to mix the gospel and sharing the gospel in with the gaming community, but it needs a lot of work. So this is intended as constructive criticism. I'm going to make another video detailing what I think a good Christian video game mod should look like, but this is just some off-the-cuff things I noticed off the top of my head. Number one, it doesn't match the lore. It's a lot of the mods I have seen. They just take a bunch of random Christian things and just plop it onto the video game without any rhyme or reason. I'm thinking of a particular Skyrim mod. I'm not going to name the mod. I honestly forget the name, and I'm not going to name it because I'm not trying to shame a serious attempt by a mod author. I think that's great, but this is intended as constructive criticism. The mod I mentioned had Jesus randomly walking on the pools in the Temple of Kinnereth. There was no exciting quests, even though, of all things, by the way, if you read the Bible, there's more violence in the Bible than in Skyrim itself. Like, that is something that we really should lean into more. And they had a Dwemer artifact that played Christian rock, which, like, it was just a very non-lore friendly. You could tell it was like this. You know, you get a random street preacher who just randomly comes in and just starts randomly talking about Jesus for no reason. How it does nothing but put people off. It does not go with what the conversation is. Yeah, that's what it came off like. In the Bible, it says, "I became like." Paul said in the Bible, Paul says, "I became like all things unto all men, that I might win all men." It says, "I became a Jew, that I might win the Jews. I became Gentile, that I might win the Gentiles." People who make these mods are not trying to be serious gamers or part of the Skyrim community. They're not interested in learning the lore. You need to learn what the lore of the video game is you're trying to mod, or the gaming community you're trying to make, and learn what makes people interested and excited in playing these video games, and lean into that. And rather than just shoving a bunch of theologies, and honestly, the mod I saw did not even have that much theology. It was just a bunch of cringy Christian themed stuff. Lean into the lore and make something that's lore friendly. Number two, purity culture. Now, I'm not talking about fornication in this regard. Like, I am a complete believer that we as Christians should avoid anything that's unchaste, even in video games. And if there's any, and honestly, if you're Christian mod authors, if you're willing to just make a video game if you're willing to just make mods that clean up some of these video games, take away all these innuendos, honestly, that'll be a much better use of your time than many other things you might be doing. Because you could make GTA a lot more Christian friendly, even, for example, if you did that. What I'm talking about is the purity culture around violence. Now, Christianity is pacifistic in its ideals. Even in branches of Christianity where war is approved of, war is allowed. Even in my tradition, I'm a traditional Catholic Christian, we say we believe the Crusades were justified. That being said, peace and love of neighbor is still the ideal. Is still the ideal. However, you can still have that value in a video game that portrays violence. I'll give an example of something else that happened. when this was done. It was an Icelandic saga, more like a novel, I should say, rather. It was about this family, fictional, and it was clan rivalry, and they just started going at each other and killing each other for revenge over something that was completely petty. It was literally a breakup. The woman got mad that her ex-boyfriend broke up with her. She got with a new guy. When she married him, she got her husband to offer her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, his new family. And eventually, by the time it was all done, she was the only person left. What she did was she said, "This is crazy. I'm giving life to Christ. I'm going to become a nun." That is a great lesson as to why. That is a great story that includes violence, adventure, clan drama to the extreme, yet it still glorifies pacifism. It still shows why we need peace, why we need forgiveness, why forgiveness is beautiful, and how harmful vengeance is. Why don't you see any of that and that depth of thought put into Christian mods? So instead of like plopping a bunch of Christian themed things in Skyrim, why not have a seriously thought out quest line that deals with Christian themes of forgiveness, and that eventually you have part of the gospel in to show thrown in here and there at the right places to show how the gospel is right in that regard. And I think so. In short, I think Christians need to stop shying away from the use of violence in video games. Like violence is discussed in the Bible, is portrayed in the Bible, Old and New Testaments. It's in the Bible, literally. I think it's good enough for God in the Bible. If it's good enough for God and the Bible, it's good enough for Skyrim. And third and final point is that I find a lot of these video games can be blasphemous. Look, I get it. You're trying to Christianize a video game, and I think it can be done. It should be done. Something that we should try to do. But randomly having Jesus hanging around the temple of Kinnereth in Whiterun while he's walking in the pools of water there, and just playing some random Christian rock band in a Dwemer cave is like, I can't tell if you're trying to make the game more Christian or you're trying to make fun of Christianity. I can't tell if you're trying to mock it. And I think it trivializes the gospel. It especially when you do it poorly, it really trivializes the fact that, just as the Elder Scrolls has a lot of deep lore and theology that has gone into it, the gospel has a lot of deep philosophy behind it that rivals anything that pagan philosophers did. It rivals anything in the Elder Scrolls or in the real world, honestly. Making a serious Christian mod would require a lot of education about the philosophy around not just Christianity, but the philosophy around Hinduism, the philosophy of the Greek-Roman world, and why Christianity went out over Greek paganism philosophically. And I remember reading a work called The Golden Ass. It was all about how pagan philosophy was seen as having, it's a satire, but it's all about how pagan philosophy was seen as having failed. And even though it's probably, The Golden Ass is as a book that is a Greek classical work that is probably beyond anything that we've seen in any video game when it comes to impurity and dirty jokes. It actually points to it ends with main character Lucius realizing that he cannot attain salvation or make it to heaven or a glorious afterlife or have an exalted plane of existence on his own. He needs someone divine to lift him up out of his nothingness and wretchedness. And that he's simply not strong enough. And it shows how all the things that in the Greek pagan world are destroyed. The moral system, the family life, philosophy, how in the end all these people just fail. And how God has to come down and save them. That's something that you don't get in a Christian mod. That's something we need in a Christian mod in video games. That is something I'd love to see in Christian pre-made video games. We got plenty of pre-made lore. Problem is, the people who are making these Christian video games don't know it, and they're not willing to dive into it in the same depth that the makers of Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls delved into Hindu lore, for example, or Kalpas. It's complete total waste, and by doing half jobs, we actually make video games more blasphemous by making Christian mods. Now, I do have an idea of what I think a Christian mod should look like, where I'd like to see it go, but that's the topic for our next video. Anyway, God bless, have a great day, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and if you ever get a chance to check out an SSPX chapel in real life, or look it up on YouTube, please do so. God bless.